Hi everyone, let's work on another find limits algebraically example. Let's make it a little messier. I've got a couple that are really messy here and then we'll move on. So let's take the limit as b approaches 0 of y plus b over y plus b squared plus 1 minus y over y squared plus 1, all divided by b. Okay, so I think I jumped to really messy here, but basically the idea is going to be you're going to have a lot of these where you can just factor and cancel, and you'll have some where you can just clear fractions and then cancel. This one you have to clear fractions, but it's particularly messy. So let's go ahead and trudge through a hard one here so you've got some really good algebra ideas. So my first check here is going to be what sort of form do I have? Do I even need algebra? So if I let b go to 0, the bottom is definitely approaching 0. And then on the top, when b is really close to 0, I get y over y squared plus 1 minus y over y squared plus 1. So the top is also going to 0. So this is a good place to use algebra. If we can cancel out that b from the top and the bottom, then maybe it won't be 0 over 0 anymore. So my very first step is going to be to clear fractions, and it's kind of ugly here, but let's go ahead and see where we go with this mess I made up for us. So we're going to multiply by that first denominator, y plus b squared plus 1, and also by the second denominator. We want to clear each of those. They don't share any factors, so we'll just have to use both. We can't just go multiplying the top of this fraction by something, so we're going to multiply the bottom by the same thing. Okay, so this is going to turn into the limit as b approaches 0. It's really important to me. I know that you don't want to write anything extra, but it's really important to me that you write that limit down in every step until you've actually let b go to 0. I'll be checking to make sure you understand when you actually take the limit, and that's how you show me. So a big part of these messy algebra problems will be really clear, easy to follow work. Make sure you're being really careful about it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and distribute through the top. It's really important you realize there's two steps happening here. So first distribute, which means this fraction is multiplied by the whole thing, and the second fraction is multiplied by the whole thing. But we kind of do that distribute step in our head. So here's what we're looking at. First multiplication, I'll get to cancel out this y plus b squared plus 1. So all that will be left is the y plus b and the y squared plus 1. So that's what I get from the first multiplication. Again, this is only looking at the top, so bottom's gone. I'm just multiplying by that. When I multiply the second fraction, I'm going to go ahead and carry that minus sign down. The y squared plus 1's will cancel, and I'll be left with the y on top and this whole y plus b squared plus 1 from the least common denominator that I'm multiplying by. And then on the bottom, I've made a little mess. The bottom was really simple. It was just a b. So in order to get rid of some of the mess on the top, the fractions, I've had to basically transfer it to the bottom. But that's okay. Don't do anything with the bottom, just leave it messy like this. That's a nice factored denominator, so at any point if I manage to free up a b on the top, I can cancel. The top, however, is not actually in a factored form. I do have some multiplication. Each one of those has a multiplication, but the big operation, the last step you would do in the top is subtraction. So we want to fix that. So we will multiply out the top. Again, please write these limits down over and over and over again. Even if you're tired of it, I want to know that you're aware of when that's supposed to go away. So here I'm going to have to FOIL. I see a y cubed plus y plus by squared plus b. And then I'll need to distribute through here. So I'm actually, let me debate what I'm going to do. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. I'm going to do two steps at once. Hopefully you won't hate me for this. I need to multiply negative y by y plus b squared and also by 1. So I'm going to have a minus y out here. But I'm going to sneak in one extra step. This y plus b squared, I'm going to go ahead and multiply that out. So that's going to turn into a y squared plus 2by plus b squared. Okay, so there's my y times this whole thing, and then here's my y times the 1. Make sure that minus sign gets distributed through. That's, again, number one mistake I see is people not distributing minus signs, and then stuff doesn't drop out like it's supposed to. Okay, so believe it or not, I would say that's better. I've got no fractions in fractions. I'm starting to get the top rewritten. What I've done right now is made it have even more addition and subtraction. But my goal is to completely get rid of all the products in here and then try and combine like terms and see if I'm left with something that I can factor a b out of. So I think just a couple more steps. Okay, so I have a y cubed plus y plus by squared plus b. And now I need to finish my distribute off. I have a negative y cubed, again, really careful with the negative sign, a negative 2by squared, a negative b squared y, and then lastly, still hanging out here on the end, is a negative y. Okay, so don't be afraid to tough it out through some messy steps that involve a lot of writing. I am very lazy about having to write things out. I understand, but you've got to do it here. You've got to be really organized, try and be a perfectionist, and keep track of everything. Okay, so let's see. Let me grab the red pen. This will be gratifying. Now that I've had to write it all out, I can start getting rid of things. So I notice that there's a y cubed and a negative y cubed. That's going to add up to 0, so that drops out. There's a y and a negative y. There is, these two are actually like terms. There's a by squared and a negative 2by squared. So we can combine those, but they don't actually go away. Okay, so let me rewrite. I am seeing the limit as b approaches 0 of a b, and then it's going to be a negative by squared. So I have a 1by squared minus 2by squared. So that leaves me with a negative 1by squared. And then I also have a negative b squared y. Okay, and that's all over b times y plus b squared plus 1 times y squared plus 1. So I would say, what, 2 more steps here. Let's see, I'm ready finally to factor out the b. This is my big goal. I can factor a b out of the top, and as soon as I do that, I'll be able to cancel it. So that leaves me with a 1 minus y squared minus by. And on the bottom, my same stuff. I should have said this earlier, but at any point, feel free to pause with these. It's a great idea to pause and try and work ahead of me a step or two and then watch and see what happens. If I don't do the exact same thing that you did, doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. A great thing to do is if you're confused by something I did, screenshot it. And then you can send me a picture and say, hey, what happened right here? So if you don't know how to screenshot from whatever computer you're on, check it out. If you have a print screen button, that'll do it nicely, and you can just paste into Microsoft Paint or something like that. So Google that if you're interested in. That's a great way to ask me a question, because that's what you lose in online classes, is that ability to stop me and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't understand what you just did. Okay, so cancel out a b. And you can see what I'm left with. I'm going to get a little lazy here. I've written it over and over and over again. So I'm going to quit writing it over and over again here. We'll do my red so that we can really see that. With what's left over, I no longer have a domain problem when b equals 0. So I can go ahead and look at this and say, okay, well now I finally get to let b equal 0. So I'm not going to write the limit anymore. This is me taking the limit. I do algebra until it gets to the point where I can plug 0 in for b, and then I go ahead and do that, and that's how I take the limit. So on the top, nothing happens to the 1, nothing happens to the y squared, but this b goes to 0, which is going to wipe out the entire term. So I get a 1 minus y squared on the top. And then on the bottom, this b goes to 0, which leaves me with just y squared plus 1 times y squared plus 1. So I'm just going to rewrite that a little bit more compact form. That's the same as a y squared plus 1 squared. Okay, so that was a big one. That's like the high end of algebra mess that you have to deal with. Thanks for watching.